Hi there, my name is Anna, and if you've seen some of my other videos, you've probably noticed that I like to keep things simple and not overly complicated. In this video, I want to talk a little bit more about my healthy food philosophy because I feel like that health aspect of cooking and food is something we tend to overcomplicate quite a bit. I'm guessing that most of us, when we are making food for ourselves, our families, our friends, we want to make it healthy. But with the amount, and I would say a complete overload of information that's out there on what healthy is and isn't, that task of deciding what to cook to make it healthy can become very stressful, making the whole experience of cooking a lot less enjoyable. My hope with this video and sharing my mindset, which I think is pretty simple and straightforward, is that this will help you alleviate some of that stress around cooking. So if I had to boil my healthy food philosophy down to only two things, it's to make things at home, cook meals at home, and try to add diversity to them. And let me unpack those. So the one thing, making meals at home, I think is something we've all heard before, that when you look at ultra processed foods versus homemade foods, it's the homemade foods that are healthier. Now, this isn't, I'm sure, 100% true in all the cases. I'm sure that there is processed food that you can find at the grocery store that is actually healthy or it's not harmful in any way. But for the most part, it will be healthier if you cook things at home versus like that exact same food if you were to buy it, and it came from a factory. Now, this might be a good place to mention that I'm not a scientist. It's not like I've done any experiments, scientific experiments myself. This is just me being a normal person who's trying to make some sense out of what I'm seeing and hearing everywhere around, and kind of use my own common sense when deciding what is probably true and what is probably false. But I think that so far I haven't said anything controversial. I think that we all know that the ultra processed foods, they are not usually made with a priority of health benefits, right? They are made so that they are kind of standardized, cheap, easy to make, like fast to make as well, so that companies that make them can make profit out of it. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing or that they shouldn't do it this way, that they should focus on other things. It's completely fine that they do it as long as we understand what we are eating when we are consuming those products, and we are kind of aware that we probably should limit our consumption of those products and that they shouldn't make up like the majority of our diet. And so when I'm applying this first principle and I am cooking, it already decreases my stress level. Like, I don't have to think so much about the health aspect of the food, because I know that just by me making it at home, I'm already making it more healthy. Because what is the other option? It's either buy the ready-made food or get it from a restaurant, which getting it from a restaurant is probably healthier than getting a processed, ready to microwave or something packaged from the grocery store. Getting a takeout from a restaurant is probably healthier, but it's also a lot pricier. So I don't want to do that. So my only option is to make it at home, and I'm happy choosing that, and it reduces the stress again, because I know I'm already contributing to making our food more healthy just by making it. It doesn't matter what it is. It's better when I'm making it at home versus if I were to buy it processed and ready-made. So that's kind of how that first principle plays into me reducing my stress levels. And then the second one, so increasing the diversity in our diet. That really is, I'm doing that as opposed to focusing on any specific ingredients or any specific foods. Because here's the thing, I feel like we are overestimating the benefits of good foods and also overestimating the negatives of bad foods. And let me explain what I mean by that. So you will often find this information that, oh, all of a sudden, avocados are this superfood and you absolutely need to eat avocados. And all of a sudden, sourdough is the biggest trend and you absolutely need to make everything sourdough. Otherwise, you're not getting the health benefits that you need to be getting right now. We just do these things where we focus, like super dial down on one individual thing and we make it into this big deal. And then you have these, 50 superfood things that you are supposed to be eating and you get stressed out if you're not including enough of them in your diet. And so that's where we are. And I'm saying we are overestimating the benefits because when you really look at the science, and this is where, again, not a scientist, not a doctor here, but I have researched this quite a bit, especially with sourdough. Like I have started looking at studies and they're not as amazing as you might think. They usually are not as large as well. Like usually the group of people in that study is fairly small, like maybe a couple hundred, but that's usually a lot. Like usually it's 50 people that they test things on. It's also very difficult to just pinpoint one single thing and its effects on your diet and your overall health, because of course there are so many variables in our lives that come into it. And so it's really difficult to study individual foods and how they affect your overall health, because and so that to me, the takeaway from that from me is there is no such individual thing that I need to be focusing on. As long as I'm adding diversity, so I'm adding lots of different vegetables and fruits, I'm adding different kinds of meat, I'm adding different grains, we're doing different dairy products, different cheeses or whatever, adding different spices. I'm covering a lot of things without having to think like what exactly are the things that we are missing from our diet, like what are the individual components. I hope that makes sense. On this, good foods, I think the one overall principle again that is kind of generally understood and agreed upon is that we are usually not consuming enough vegetables and fruits in our diets. That's kind of just the general for our, let's say, Western cultures, at least the Western kind of cooking, that usually is a problem. And so that's maybe where I tend to focus, like make sure we are getting enough of diverse fruits and vegetables. And again, this diversity is something that I have seen a lot, like being the focus of, the health aspects of food, that if the more diverse your diet, the better for you. And again, like I like that principle because it's very general and you can then take whatever you need from that and apply it in your cooking. It's not any individual specific ingredient. And on the other side that I've mentioned, overestimating the negatives of bad foods, two specific examples come to mind, and that's salt and sugar. Those two have both been quite villainized, I feel like, in our food culture recently. Before it was also fat, and like we tend to again focus on these very like individual components of food, individual ingredients, and then blow them out of proportion and make them really stand out. Where with the salt and sugar, potentially the fat as well, from what I have understood over the years, is they are a problem in the ultra processed foods because there is a lot of it added to make those foods taste as good as they do to us, which is why we want them. And that's how, the whole cycle kind of repeats. So they like when you use salt, sugar, and fat in your regular cooking at home, you're not using those insane quantities that they use when they make the ultra processed food. And so you don't have to worry about using them in your cooking. And again, when I say you, I mean, I don't worry about it because that's my takeaway from it. You make out of it whatever you want. Again, not a doctor, not a scientist, so I can't, back this up with research and whatever, but it is what I have seen and what I have heard scientists and doctors say about these topics. So I don't worry about using these ingredients. I don't worry about baking cookies and having muffins for breakfast and doing all sorts of cakes and whatever and having them be really tasty because I add sugar to it. It's fine. Again, I am making them myself, all of these foods, which is already a lot healthier compared to if I was to buy a muffin from a plastic bag at the grocery store. And so what I do, how I try to add the diversity into the cooking is I try to learn new recipes, new ways of incorporating more things into our diet. If there is like a particular vegetable, maybe I will Google what to do with zucchini, and I'll try to come up with 3 or 4 different ways how I can add it into our foods. I'll try to look for different recipes for what to do with eggs for breakfast to keep things diverse, and maybe here and there I'll add, this time I'll add some some spring onions into the scrambled eggs. Another time, maybe I'm making an egg salad and I'm adding some microgreens to it, things like that. But I still have to remind myself to not get sucked into this thinking of like, now that I have started with sourdough, everything needs to be sourdough. Or from now on, I only have to make bread at home, and we sourdough bread at home, and we can't buy bread at the grocery store. That's not, again, I don't think that that's helpful to think that way. I have to admit, I do get into that mindset every now and then, but then again, I just remind myself, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. That maybe is the last principle that I go by. So it's the making food at home rather than buying it processed from the store, adding diversity, and then the 80-20 principle, the 80-20 rule, which can be applied to so many things. So 80% of things I try to go with the first two. So 80% of what we eat, I would like that to be something that I have cooked myself, where I have thought about the diversity of the ingredients. And then the 20% can still be the McDonald's if we are going on a trip and, I don't feel like making a lunch for us ahead of time or something, or it's usually on Sunday night, we like to order pizza. So that's what we do. And I don't have to punish myself or somehow feel stressed about buying this processed food or buying the takeout, because I know that the 80% of the rest of the time, the other meals are things that I have made at home, where I have put a little bit more thought into what I'm cooking and what I'm adding to it. And one last thing I want to touch on is that food is just one part of our health, right? Even if you were to eat the absolute best food there is for your health, if you were at the same time smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, drinking a bottle of wine in the evening, sleeping for only 4 hours, working a super stressful job, sitting at a computer all day, my guess is you're not going to be very healthy at the end. So this is just to say that healthy food is only a portion of our overall health. And that's kind of going back to what I was mentioning about the individual foods. It kind of works as even a bigger picture still, right? Healthy food plus just like your general lifestyle, how much stress you get out of your job or other things you have going on in your life, how much sleep you're getting, how much movement and kind of activity you're doing. All of those things contribute to your overall health, which again, on one hand is maybe making things more stressful because now there is even more things you have to think about and kind of keep in balance. But for me, what I like to take from it is actually less stress, because since healthy food is only a small portion of it, it means that I don't have to, it's not that important. It's not crucial that you eat in a certain way. Especially it's not crucial that you eat or don't eat particular ingredients. Like, they just play such a small portion in the overall very big picture that they just don't affect things all that much. At least that's what I tell myself every time I want to have a piece of chocolate or whatever other unhealthy food that I'm craving at the moment. So that's everything I have to say on the subject. Let me know down in the comments if this was helpful for you, if you have any thoughts that were kind of sparked by this conversation, if there's other kind of principles that you go by when it comes to healthy food and how you cook. I'm really curious to know all about that. And that is it from me for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.